Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our deep dive into this radical feminist book. We've done over 70 videos going through her ideas, seeing where she's coming from, how we as Muslims can counteract her, how you can also counteract her just from a secular perspective as well. But it's important to dissect her views, do some textual analysis, and see what these women are pushing, because this is on everyone's doorstep. Okay, so let's continue upon that path. Let's begin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay. Alright. The fight over domestic work is the greatest unfinished battle of modern feminism. Okay, so they just really don't want to do chores. Many of us watched our mothers and grandmothers fight and lose the domestic Cold War. The domestic Cold War. That's kind of funny. Many of us live with the heavy remnants of generations of swallowed rage. Okay, so swallowed rage. You need to do some anger management. Don't give yourself an ulcer. I carry in my body the memory of my mother's directionless distress, my grandmother's towering frustration at finding herself trapped by love and a circumstance of lack of options and lack of money, into scrubbing the sink and serving dinner for ungrateful men who expected lifelong service as the price of their essential presence. Okay, so let's break this down right here, okay? So scrubbing the sink, you can use, if you got, I have gloves that are soft and fuzzy inside, rubber, right? Pink, they got flowers, I got some blue ones with flowers. It's not that bad. Ajax smells good too. I like the smell of bleach. And I have a white sink. It's not metal, like some are chrome. Not chrome, but stainless steel. And, you know, you scrub the tile with Ajax. On the sink, you got a podcast on. Look out the window. It's really not that bad. If you have a good view of trees and the sky, and you do 15 minutes of scrubbing the sink, it's not that bad. Also, okay, when I'm done washing the dishes, I take the sponge and I rinse it under cold water, and then I squeeze that water around the sink. Always rinse out your sponge, okay? Don't just like wash and then leave it there with all the bacteria. No. And I have a little, like, you know how you buy a tub of sour cream or cream cheese? Well, use that. Rinse it out, soap it, clean it. Put a little bit, like 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of Clorox bleach. And because if you bleach your coffee cups, they stay whiter. We used to do that in restaurants. Put them in a big bucket of bleach to get the coffee stains off. And if you put some tablespoons of bleach in there, and then some your Dawn dish soap, whatever flavor, whatever scent. I'm not eating dish soap, I mean scent. And then you fill that up with water, right? So you got like this much of a liquidy soap mixture. Dip your sponge in there with your gloves on. Wash your dishes, do your thing. And then you put that soap thing to the right, and wherever you put your little soap thing, you know, you keep it. And then you take cold water, and then you put your sponge underneath, and then you squeeze it around, and you rinse off the counters and rinse off the sink. That bleach cleans every single time you wash dishes, and it keeps the sink pure white. So you really only got to Ajax once a week. If you cook with turmeric, or you're scrubbing your cast iron skillet, then you're gonna usually have to scrub after that. But if you just cut chicken, fish, meat essentially, but especially chicken and turkey, pheasant, you rinse your sponge out afterwards, and like how I just told you, and then you sanitize that whole thing, help you prevent salmonella, all that stuff. So it's really not that bad. And if you're scrubbing the sink, they have like the long brushes too now, where you can just scrub. It's like, it ain't gonna take you longer than 15 minutes. With Ajax, you just first get it wet, sprinkle the Ajax, let it sit there for a minute, right? You're doing your thing, la la la, and then you scrub, and then you get a cup, or you either, some people have a hose and they can spray it. Others, if you use your hand and you cup the water, it don't make no sense. So what you should do is you can get your cleaning tub, another sour cream container that you've repurchased or whatever you use. It's just a container, and then you just rinse it off, and you're done. And you're done. It's really, really not that big of a deal. And serving dinner for ungrateful men. So, a lot of men are grateful for a hot plate. They're not always going to be licking their fingers like, this is finger licking good, baby. Give you a nice butt smack. But does a woman get on her knees and grovel every time her husband cooks dinner? Think about that. So what does this woman want the man to do to show gratitude? Oh, this is really good. This is delicious. That's what my husband does. And I've shared some reels on Instagram that have been really funny, where women will serve their husband's food and they'll be like, I want him to say it's the best thing he's ever tasted in his life. This is true. As someone who, I love to cook for people, and I love to share food. I show love through food. I just kind of wait to see the reaction of people. I'm like, do they like the cookie? Is it the best cookie they ever had? So my husband doesn't need to be like, listen, baby, I just want you to know it's the best cookie I ever had, and he starts crying. Like, that'd be kind of creepy, right? But there's different ways men show you they're grateful. Okay? This is not unusual family history. It is part of what is meant when you hear any man say that his mother was a strong woman, often with an undertone of judgment. She did what she had to do. You have to do what you have to do, though. She suffered and worked and didn't complain, so why can't you? There's a degree to that. I mean, the way my husband's mom worked in her rural village, cooking on an open fire, rural village life, cooking for 10 children, her husband, my father-in-law, bringing home an animal they hunted and then dropping it and being like, hey, you have to break it down, and he's going out working on the farm. And not farms like America now, American farms. These are like titty-tot. I'm talking like hot Mexico sun. Like, you gotta take care of the beehives. There's turkeys that gotta be taken care of. There's a lot going on here. And so he's doing that while she handles the food part. And it's a team. The children gotta be fed. So, you're gonna suffer no matter if you're at work or whether, you're at home doing what you gotta do. Because, as I've showed before, Earth is a planet where we are here to suffer. We're here to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you're not getting around suffering. Okay? It's just not possible. No matter if you think you're doing the Buddha 8-fold path, 7-fold path, or whatever, suffering is ordained for this planet. Okay? If the honeybees get tired and have to rest, so will you. And they never stop working. Really. They just go and go and go, and they never complain. You got animals doing great migrations. Okay? You got those little cute chubby sea lions or whatever, the seals in the frigid waters looking for fish. Penguins sitting on their egg in that rigid cold, biting cold that we couldn't be able to handle, hoping that their mate comes back with food so that they can switch and sit on the egg. You can't get around it. That's just the way Earth is. I'd agree, like, how much suffering can you take? That's the question. But you have to keep going. You can't stop. You can't wallow. Because it's like sinking sand. You're just going to go deeper and deeper. I do not believe that women should be required to be that strong in order to be worthy, to be loved. Well, do women love what's weak? Do women love what's weak? Do women love weak men? Do they love really effeminate men? Like, if man's like, I don't want to go to work today, I want to paint my nails. And she's like, well, I'm 8 months pregnant. I need you to go to work. And he's like, well, I just need a mental health day. And I'm just going to stay home and put on lip gloss. And he's like, well, actually, I need you to work. The man, it's very erotic when you have an in-shape man, comes home from a labor job, puts his boots in up, and he smells like work, like concrete, or the lawn trimmings, or just outdoors. And then you see him go over to the trash and take it out, or take out the recycling, and then come back inside, wash his hands, hold the baby or something, and he's like, you can go take a shower, I'll take care of the children. And you're like, oh. And the energy that men have is if a man is weak. Now, it's different. If he's a veteran who had his leg blown off, he's not weak. He's disabled a different way, but he's not mentally weak. A man who is mentally weak is a threat, a risk, a liability, and you're like, okay, you need to go see a doctor. We got to get you fixed. A weak man of his mind is a liability, and he's not putting his weight in the team. We women are more sensitive, so I need my man to be the rock. I really do. I do. When I was going through postpartum, you got that darkness coming because you're sleep deprived. He can see, that we women are different. We don't have to be these She-Hulks. And there'll be times where we need help, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help. But if you're becoming a basket case, as we say, and you're having constant mental breakdowns, and you're lethargic, you're lazy, you're always pissy, you're never pleased, you're ungrateful, you're always combative, argumentative, always trying to find fault in everything, you're not creating a sense of a nest in the home, a sanctuary. Your home is supposed to be like a sanctuary. So many women and non-binary people, dude, come on. I'm not a man or a woman. I could totally go into that stupid trend. It's just a way to feel special. It's a way of hating your own body so much that you don't appreciate your breasts, and you don't appreciate your vag. You reject your beautiful female essence. You're not a man. You don't have a phallus. It's just not what is going on. I'm the first one in my family who hasn't had to develop that sort of strength in order to survive. Honey, you may not have a man, but clearly she puts out by the third date, so. And she got mad for being friend zoned because she told the guy that she likes to get effed, and was showing how she's a nymphomaniac. And no wonder he was probably get away from me, AIDS. Psst. From a very young age, I saw how miserable it was, making the women in my family to have to summon that sort of strength every day to do work they resented. Work that was never recognized, work they were not free in any meaningful sense to reject. Okay, so resentment. Recognition. So how do you prevent resentment? Is with gratitude. If you start feeling resent in your heart, you can sit with your partner and have a civil discussion. And be like, hey, I'm not really feeling appreciated. And if he tells you, no, I appreciate you, and this and that, he has his struggles. You got to come together, and you have to know that a long relationship requires forgiveness. And nobody can really be your Romeo. It's not possible. So you're going to have to take some of the bad with the good. Every man's going to have a habit you don't like, and then trust me, there's going to be plenty of things about you, honey, that he doesn't like, okay? And if you actually were honest with yourself, you could look at your own annoying habits. All of us women have annoying habits. There was a funny one I saw where someone was like, you're sitting on the couch, the woman gets up, the husband doesn't really say anything, but the man gets up, the woman's like, where are you going? I don't know if I do that too, because sitting there and he gets up, where are you going? It's a weird thing. It's a very weird thing where you're always like, once your husband leaves, like, he's maybe just going over there, like, where are you going? Like, but why? You know, or you know that they get off work at a certain time, and you never know how traffic is. But if they're too late, you're like, well, where are you? Are you okay? What's going on? Why aren't you texting back? And like, they're literally driving, and you don't want them to text and drive, but then you're texting them, getting mad that they don't text you back. You know, like, there's tons of things we do that irritate men in a good, humored way. So, be mindful. And some men will change their habits, but if you're not willing to change, but you're expecting him to do all the changing, well, then you're a bit of a tyrant, aren't you? You're not really trying to be equal. There is enormous difference between choosing to do that work and being bullied into doing it because nobody else will. Because your partner doesn't see the mess. Because your husband expects to be told what to do and praised every time he remembers the empty dishwasher because he has been taught that it's not his job. And that eventually someone, ideally a woman, will come along and do it for him. Now, it's true that there are a bit of some machismo, okay? But what if your husband was like, hey honey, the gutters on the roof, they're filled with leaves and mud, and you know, I want you to go and climb up on there, and I want you to take that out. Now, I have done that for my grandparents, but there's a lot of women who are very bougie. They don't want to do yard work. I would prefer to do yard work than clean the bathroom. Even though I like the bathroom to be clean, I would rather mow the lawn than do that, or paint a fence or something. But that's just me. But I do know a lot of women who would not want to do the plumbing, who would not want to do some of the really messy jobs. And a mess, how bad can a mess really be? Like, okay, so my children, they have fun during the day. Sometimes we clean twice or 3 times. We gather up the toys and put them back in. But when they're teeny tots, they're gonna explore, right? They're gonna build forts. They're gonna have their stuffies playing and Legos, building blocks, things like that. You know, like my teeny tot will take my prayer rug, unroll it, put my hijab around her. Sometimes she'll just hold my hijab and walk around with it. Today, she took all the pillows off the chair, you know, and then she put them back on the chair, and then took them back off, and then put them back on, and she was just having fun doing that. You know, take the books off the bookshelf. She stands on them. I tell her don't do it. She puts them back, then she does it again. Takes the colored pencils, dumps them out. You're like, oh, what are you gonna do? But it's part of their exploration development. It's like they're just curious. So maybe I'm just lucky that I have someone who sees the mess, but when he comes home from work, all the messes are clean. But if he comes home in the midday, well, the children are playing. You know, we're playing, and it can't be super fancy because the tot is not at that age. But when your children are older, you teach them to clean up after themselves, right? So it's really not that hard. And what kind of messes are you really making? You know, I mean, you have to really ask yourself, like, what are we talking about here? What are you having, a tornado? Are you having like a rage cocaine-fueled party at your apartment every night? Like, what's going on? Like, what kind of messes? Like, how is, like, when I draw, and then I put it back. I paint, I clean up after myself. I don't really see, like what, he needs to put the pillow a certain angle? And how many times have men helped and then the women make a joke where, oh, well, you're not doing it the right way? You know? It's interesting. You know, you'll see a bit of women's OCD come out when a man tries to help them. And then they wonder why he doesn't want to help, but they bitch and complain about how he helps. So, the home for a great many women, and particularly for a great many mothers, is a hostile work environment. Neoliberal capitalism coped with the threat of the sexual revolution. So she doesn't like neoliberalism, and she doesn't like capitalism. But she herself is a leftist communist. Definitely a Marxist. second wave feminism by making women work invisible, by submitting it within the demands of the nuclear family. The nuclear family, a straight married couple living with their children and nobody else, does not describe my life or many of my peers' lives. So hold on. How many women complain about living with their in-laws? It's very horrible. Horrible. My very first relationship, where I moved in with someone who I thought I was going to marry. Should have married first, then moved in. But Allah knows best. I'm glad I didn't marry him, looking back. But moved in with him, I was like 16, then turned 17. And his mom and stepdad lived there, and then his brother and his wife and their little baby lived there as well. It was not cool. It was too many people, too many. The kitchen's always being used. You can't nest. Yeah, you always have to be like quiet. You know, it's not ideal. I had roommates in the beginning when I lived with my husband. We had our first child. We had roommates, so it was one of his friends and his girl in the one room, and then his brother would sleep on the couch in the living room, and then me, him, and the baby in the other room. That was not cool at all. It was not fun. I always had to be in my room, and me and her, we didn't get along. I need to be the queen of the castle. I don't do well with other women living in the same roof. I just don't. I get territorial, you know. Now it's different if she if you're gonna have like your husband's gonna have like a second wife, then she has to live somewhere else, or if on the same compound, like, but she has her own residence. But in an apartment, you're on top of each other, and I'm not that kind of a person. Like, you put two rats in a cage, sometimes they fight. You put two birds, they're gonna have a scuffle. You know, even dogs and cats, they have a scuffle. Only koi fish really just get along all the time. I mean, even chickens fight. So, no matter which way you square it, some personalities just don't mix, and that was not cool. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life now that it's me, my husband, and our children, in my home, how I want it. No one's touching my stuff. I don't have to smell nobody. I really hated smelling another woman's shampoo and hearing her in my shower in my husband's home. I didn't like it. It felt wrong. It's not cool, man. And two of those girls were attractive enough for maybe him to commit adultery, and I didn't want that. You can't sleep like that. And when you guys need to argue or you need to have a serious conversation, they can hear you. No, man. And they're gonna gossip? No. So, my brother, one of my brothers, is gonna, when he gets married, my mom, if she's old, would live with him. Okay? On my dad's side, when my dad gets older, that's up to my other three siblings to take care of him. Now, if my grandpa, he obviously lives with my grandma, and then my grandma's mom, which is my great-grandma, lives with them. But he doesn't like it, but he tolerates it. But they have a house. So he's upstairs, she's downstairs. So they have some distance, right? And she helps out with things in the home. But I would argue, when I'm old, I do want my children to take me in, but if they have a house. And if not, they can visit me in a tiny little cottage cabin or something like that up in the mountains. But it would be smarter for me to live with my daughters. If I had a son, I know how his wife would feel, and I would feel like a very inconvenience, you know, because if let's say I have a son, and I cook for my son, it's like I'm cutting across his woman's job, and there's competition there. But if I'm cooking for my daughter and her husband as a sweet treat, I'm just doing it's just a different type of energy that doesn't feel as less invasive. you know, because the female connection to my daughters, but I don't have the female connection to my son's wife. It's just different, you know. Like when I would cook for the guy I was gonna marry when I was like 16, 17, and his mom would cook, there was competition who's gonna cook for him. She didn't want to let go of her son, and she would cook him. I would cook Italian food, she'd cook Mexican food, and then she would say how much she hated Italian food in front of me, and she would say these really mean comments. And when my ex's brother would want to eat my food, but oh, can I try some? The mom would say, no, aquí está tu comida, like, no, here's your food. Like, she wouldn't let others eat my food. And so just the tension was so thick, and eventually she was part of the reason why we just couldn't endure the relationship, because he wouldn't move out because his mom wanted to have him help pay rent, and me, I was helping pay rent, and it was not good, man. And I showed him homes, like we could move here, we could move there, but it didn't work. Like, I wanted to be in my own domain, you know? So I can understand how some people want to do that, but as a woman, I gotta have my own place. And I hear all the time sisters complain to sheikhs about this. But it's better to live in a studio apartment with your husband to live in a, you know, a 2-bedroom apartment with your in-laws. It's just not right. You gotta feel like you have to mature, you know. With an elder, they're different, you know. Like if the elderly person's like between 70 and 90, they're just chilling, you know. They're eating their Jello, eating their pudding cup. They're not trying to bother nobody, you know. Taking a nap. They're very quiet elderly people. But an in-law, she's still young and spry, and she's just gonna have more of her female ego, and it just doesn't work. Maybe that's different for when you have like the father-in-law living, but again, I've seen stories where the father-in-law committed adultery with the daughter-in-law, and that's brutal, you know. Like, the woman would be cooking in tiny shorts. Muslim women, we wouldn't do this. But she'd be cooking in tiny shorts and have a bonnet on. And, like, the father-in-law's there, like, staring at his son's wife's body. And he's going to be lusting for her. I mean, no way, man. It's just not safe. It's too much drama. It's too much drama. And so, I think you can get... If you want to take your children to visit grandma, grandpa, aunties, cousins, all that, you can take them there, or they can come to you, pick up your children, and have a good time. That's how you get the extended help network. They don't literally have to live with you in order to help you with your children. Nor does it describe our childhoods. More than half of millennials grew up with parents who divorced or separated, or in single-parent families. So she thinks that's a good thing. Apparently, she hates the nuclear family, but it's like single-parent homes, right? That means that most of us have seen firsthand how painfully the nuclear family can fail, and how hard it can be for a parent to struggle alone. We have fought to balance the expectation that a successful adult life involves living with a long-term, committed romantic partner, with the awareness that it doesn't always work out that way in the long run. So she says here, we have fought to balance the expectation that so she's putting it in a negative sense, that living with a long-term committed romantic partner. So she thinks short-term uncommitted partner is more successful and should be more. So having rotating men like your socks, you know, just getting ran through by different guys, risking STDs, having your kids so you get railed by a new guy you met on Tinder. You know, they get to see their mom be the hood rat. You know, she thinks that's great. But if you have a romantic long-term relationship, oh no, that's totally bad. You see how her thinking is inverted? With the awareness that it doesn't always work out that way. But we still want it to be safe, to love and be loved, and to form families. Today in America and Britain and elsewhere, the majority of adults are not cohabitating with a romantic partner. Millennials, in particular, are more likely to live with friends, flatmates, family members, or alone than they are to live with a romantic partner. That's not right. You shouldn't live with you need to live with your mate in order to keep an eye on them, and you can have breaks from each other, but you shouldn't be living with your friends instead. Your friends are going to be a negative influence, especially your single friends. Single friends who are horny and they want to be out, they gonna get you into trouble. And roommates are a huge risk. You can't have mixed male and mixed female roommates. And if you have a male roommate who's hotter than you and you invite your girl over and she sees him, she may want him and he may try to get it. It just don't work that way. You know? The reason for this is not because we've collectively decided to tear up our parents' social norms. It's economic necessity. Well, okay, so you can find everyone has a path that'll work for them. So you can live farther away and commute. You can live in something smaller. You can have side hustles plus your main job, online income, or just going without and being very minimalistic. I feel like there's a path for each person, but they have to be willing to live within their means and have their treats, and like there's such a balance and there's a delicate finesse, but it's not necessary to live with roommates. Now, if you are single and you're not ready to start a family or get married and you want to have roommates, I did that. I rented a room and paid $550 for my room. That's different, right? But as soon as you find someone who you want to marry, you need to live with them. It's not like we're going to be married but live in separate houses. Like, you can't be married and have a roommate. It's just not good for you. And if that man, if the other persons are attractive, no, man. That's not cool. It's just not worth the risk. It's just not. You're going to set yourself up for failure if you do that kind of stuff. The reason for this is not because economic necessity, but the nuclear family too was always about economic necessity. The traditional nuclear family, which really enjoyed only a brief heyday for 3 decades in the mid-20th century, was not just a social ideal, but an economic strategy. A way of organizing society to maximize production, a way of making sure that the work of cooking, cleaning, childcare, and social organization got done on an individual domestic level. If you, in Downton Abbey, right? They have a mansion, many rooms, servants. That is an aristocratic family who has a lot of wealth, okay? You can live with a family in that kind of situation because everyone has a place to seclude themselves when they need to get away from everyone else. And they have money to have grounds to walk in gardens. I could understand that. Like if I was wealthy and I had a compound, homestead, where it's like, okay, we got the greenhouse, we got the animal barn, we have separate little dwellings, something like that, a Roman atrium style architecture, that'd be okay to a certain degree, but I would prefer to have visitors rather than permanent residents, unless they're elderly, and small little teeny tot children is fine. They need help and love. But on a woman who has a good body, no, it's not happening. And a fitna of having a male around who's attractive with a nice body and who isn't my husband, just walking about as a roommate, no. That's not going to work for me. Why would I put myself to such a trial? Why would I invite Shaitan? No. For many decades, a huge part of the reason that women in particular sought out traditional marriage was that it was the major way of securing your financial future. So traditional marriage securing your financial future, of making sure that you and any kids you had would be able to survive in a society that didn't provide for childcare, didn't allow many women to work for money, and paid them very little when it did. Again, so what has she done here? If government provides you childcare, you don't need to be a stay-at-home mom. Your kids don't need you as a mom. A nanny, a daycare can replace you just the same, and it's better for you to work, be away from your husband, be at a grueling, boring-ass job, and have the government facilities raise your kids. And that's better for your future than making memories on this planet for your futile and short existence. That's how, really look at what she's telling you. Don't do a trad marriage where you will marry a good provider husband who's going to help you survive in this chaotic world where you'll be able to be with your children. No. Ditch your kids, ditch your husband, become very masculine, jaded, burnt out, and tired, and then go to a soul-crushing job and, hope that you be the next boss babe. If that's what you want to do, somebody gotta do it. But our system is set up to where people gotta spend so much time and money to get things that shouldn't take that long. Like, who designed the degrees to take that long? Think about it. It's like a whole, shenanigan. Okay, you have to study these classes to get certified and have these credentials, and then each one has a different program, and you're just paying, and then you're paying interest on that, and you're like, wait a minute, could this be condensed? What is there? Is there a different path for this? Medicine obviously is different, but for other fields, you gotta wonder how this is all set up, It's something to really think about. A major reason for that men sought out marriage was to have, in effect, free labor, to have someone to organize their lives, to clean and keep house and raise children while he, in theory, went out to win bread. He, in theory. What a cunt. He, in theory. No, it's not theory. He's literally doing it. He's literally going out and earning money. So it's not a theory. Okay? And saying that men just wanted free labor, men want to protect their private parts from unlawful sexual intercourse. And heterosexual men like women. Okay? And they want to have a beautiful woman to come home to who's eager to have intimacy with them, who refreshes and rejuvenates them with her feminine presence, feeds them. I mean, who wouldn't like that? Who wouldn't like that? And it's nice to be a woman and just see your husband come home and you're like, this is nice. You spend time away from each other. You get to protect your mental health. You don't have to deal with shitty customers. And then you get to actually be pretty, And you get to be safe from criminals, from crime, from robberies. I mean, I have a screenshot that I should post, where a woman was in a blue dress and she was walking in New York City, and these thugs, beat her with a baseball bat and robbed her in broad daylight. No one came to help her. It's like when Islam says, stay in your homes, you're protecting yourself from a lot of risks. You don't need to be a busybody out there and about. It's important to recognize when and where you're needed. You can cut out access to your mind in so many ways, and when you get older, you really do start to shy away from being the social butterfly. And if the man wants to go out there and be the gladiator, alhamdulillah. Because I ain't trying to do that anymore. Retired, alhamdulillah. May Allah keep it that way, and I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows more women to be provided for and to not have to go to these really soul-sucking jobs. The ideology of romance and the insistence that straight people marry and form two adult households because they have found the one is surprisingly recent innovation. I've heard this from men as well about romance, but you can create romance, and there can be one-sided romance, by the way. Like me, if I want to be romantic in my own head, I'll go to my husband and just grab onto his beard. I like that. I like it. I'm doing it. It's romantic to me. To him, he's probably just like, "What are you doing?" But to be romantic, it's not always that he has to be doing something to you. You can be romantic, and he may not find it romantic, but you're showing affection, right? So, romance goes through ups and downs. It's the hardest when your baby is new, right? To 1 year old, from birth to 1 year old, it's very difficult. Okay, it's really hard because your brain is tired, your body is tired, and sleep deprivation really wreaks havoc on your mood. But like, there's little things like just have gratitude. Like my husband, sometimes he will make espresso for me and put it in the fridge because that's what I like to do. I like to make my espresso. I put it in the fridge so it chills. When I make my ice drinks to come do my videos, make myself a nice ice vanilla latte. The espresso is chilled so don't melt the ice, right? And sometimes I'll wake up and then he'll tell, "Oh, your espresso's in the fridge." Like, that's romantic to me. Some women will be like, I can just get DoorDash. I can just go get that from the gas station. Like, they don't have this, they don't look at the little things. Because if you look at the little things, it would add up. Like, sometimes he'll go to the gas station and give me my favorite chips, Flamin' Hot Cheetos with lime. Hello, that's awesome. He'll give me sometimes my favorite croissant. Or he'll say, like, "Here's some money to take the kids to the donut shop." And I'm like, "Oh, that's wonderful." Or I ask him, "Can you bring me a burrito with my favorite salsa verde? Like, no meat, just like a burrito, but it doesn't have any meat." He's like, "Yeah, sure." And he'll bring it. Like, there's little things that add up. Like grains of sand that slowly build a sandcastle, a sand mound. And you gotta look at that. You know? It's amazing. And then you have to think of the little ways you can show love. And how you show romance over the years will change. Because you get to know that person more. And you gotta switch it up. Okay? And when you see one thing is getting kind of too normative, as in like, okay, you've been doing the same thing for a while, you gotta switch it up so that there's something refreshing and new. You know? I would take a shower, my husband would open the door, pinch my butt, close it, and I'd be like, "Stop!" Like, there's so many different things you can do to make things different. You know? When I was making soaps, my husband bought me all the stuff I needed. That was romantic. Constantly, like, your husband can do things for you, but if you just take it for granted, then you're not gonna get the sweetness of the romance. Yes, some people marry for political reasons, just purely for wealth. I mean, there's tons of gold diggers who are literally just married for wealth. They're like, "I don't care if he's ugly, I don't care if he's whatever, I just want the money." Okay? But they'll have their own ways that they want a man to show romance, and they usually feel the man shows romance through money. Other women, romance is through cuddling. I'm not into cuddling really too much like that. Like, some women, they just want to lay there and they're like hugging. I don't relate to something like that. But something I think is romantic would be like, we're in the grocery store and I see some sushi being made and I'm like, "Can I have some sushi?" Because that's my favorite thing. He's like, "Yeah, sure. It's $15. Like, we go to Whole Foods, there's some sushi being made. Can I have some sushi, please?" Sometimes he'll say no. He can't always say yes, which is fine. Because he's like, "Oh, we got a budget. We have a budget." And I'm like, "Okay." But sometimes he'll say yes. That's romantic. You know? I mean, there's so many ways you can show romance and get your own satisfaction, even if you don't really understand it. You know? Everything adds up. So make the romance. Okay? You gotta try. It also makes the nuclear family precarious. After all, if every household is centered on a single romantic partnership between adults. The family itself is ended in its current form. Single romantic partnership? What are you trying to say? Between adults? What you trying to say with that line? This, of course, plays another function. It keeps people tied into those relationships. What's wrong with that? See, she's like, oh, don't be tied to one man. Go get railed by the community. Get you some gonorrhea. In particular, it gives women who still earn less money and are far more likely to be in part-time or unwaged work a vested interest in staying in relationships they might otherwise leave. I mean, yeah, that is true. If you don't have the financial money to go, you usually stay. But even if, you really got to be careful. Because for us Muslims, we cannot have intimacy outside of a married relationship. Okay? We want to have as less sins as possible. So you want to be married. Okay? And you can feel more feminine if you stop saying no to your husband when he wants intimacy, because your body's going to age and you get less attractive as you age. So be happy that he even still wants you. Feel a compliment and high self-esteem when he initiates, and feel feminine by allowing him to take the lead and encouraging him when he does something right, and relaxing with your anal personality. Don't be a doomsday person. Plan, but don't be like, the end is nigh. What if? One day at a time. Be smart. Okay? Don't just ditch your relationship and think that you're going to be happy alone in a studio apartment by yourself with wine, a dildo, and edibles. It's not the same, man. It gets quiet. Now, me, it's different because you have kids, you get quiet at night, you study, you got that solidness. But when I'm older, I want to have grandchildren around, or I want to be maybe volunteering at a school or something. You need to have life around you. To be alone, a recluse hermit, it's not something that a lot of women are built for. To become that crazy woman in the woods, Hansel and Gretel. It's just real creepy. Be careful, because there's tons of women who, while they're young, they're like, ignore men, la la la. When they start to age and they're like, oh, I need to find a mate. But they realize that their peak window has faded, and that the pickings at the buffet are not as fresh as they used to be. Then the mental health starts to come in. It's not a good thing. You gotta really make a choice. There's a lot of benefits to having a male around. I don't think I would sleep as good if I didn't have a male protector. Could have a shotgun, could have a roided out Cane Corso. But man, there's something nice about having a man around. The traditional male breadwinning model has been obsolete for decades on an economic as well as cultural level. Wage repression means that nobody can afford to support a household on a single salary anymore. So one minute she says the male breadwinning model is bad, that he in theory went out to win bread, but then she's saying, it's a shame, and the past rating says it's a shame that men want housewives. Now she's saying, oh, well, no one can afford to support a household on a single salary anymore. So which is it, woman? You told women to go out and work. Now you're mad that they can't stay home and be housewives, and you complain that men want housewives. You see, it's almost like her own. She's like, I'm non-binary. No, you're mentally ill. Okay? Oh, I'm defending women. Meanwhile, she's denying her own femininity by calling herself non-binary. These people, this is why it's important to go through line by line Annotate, take notes, because this is how you unravel the thread. Because on the surface, when you're angry at your husband or something, you read their works and you're like, yeah. But then when you're at like CVS pharmacy and you're scanning for 9 hours and you're like, oh man, this wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. And then when you're home with your children and they're playing and giggling and you're sipping your boba tea and you're looking at your pets or something and you're like, this is wonderful. Or when it's raining and it's beautiful and you're home snugly with your little children, you know, you don't have to be out there under the fluorescent lights, you know, arguing. It's nice, man. You can control your own world when you're not at work, and you can gain way more knowledge. Every path has pros and cons, but there's a way to make things better. The nuclear family makes far less sense as an economic unit when two adults both work full-time outside of the home and there are no other adults around to do social reproductive work. So 2 adults working full-time. And yet there is an airless void in culture where alternatives to the nuclear family might be imagined. So what are you trying to say? Are you trying to, like, you can be a second wife, second, third, fourth wife, but any man who's going to allow you to be in an open marriage from the female side, he doesn't care about you, and he's a threat. There's a growing trend of young, straight women choosing to raise children together, and of single mothers doubling up to form households where they can provide mutual aid and support. So what? I know she said straight women, but this sounds like the Golden Girls. The Golden Girls was elderly women living together. They already had their children. But a bunch of horny single moms living together sounds like a lesbian dream. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna turn them bi, we're gonna turn them lesbo, we're all gonna have our pegging instruments up. Women are way more catty. Remember this show called The Bad Girls Club? Where you had all these attractive women put into a reality TV show and they could barely get along? At work, how many women are bitchy catfighting? Can you imagine the nightmare of living with a bunch of single moms? With, like, no. I get it. I mean, try it. It's interesting. If you recall, not too long ago I mentioned feminists don't create communes for women to raise kids. Here, though, she's at least she's presenting an idea of an all-female area where people help one another. That sounds also like in Boardwalk Empire, Jimmy Dominy's mom gets the mansion and she creates a brothel, and like all the women are living in this brothel, and Jimmy's son lives there and he's around all these harlots, and like there's this idea that women have had where you can just not have men and all the women raise the children together. But she said straight women, but straight women eventually are gonna hunger for a man, I'd argue. You know, you long for it. You long for intimacy. The smell of men, the presence of testosterone. You know, when a woman wants to leave a bad relationship and she goes to a place like this, that'll suffice, right? Have somewhere to run away to. But eventually she's gonna be like scanning like a hyena on the savannah for where's the next wildebeest. Like, I don't, you know, and that much hormones around, ovulation, people on their grumpy period, no, cat fights like you couldn't believe. And it's okay, you know, it's okay to admit that as women you wouldn't really want that. Could work as a temporary solution, but permanent? No. It's a idea, but you would start seeing women sneak in men, you know. Single mothers helping other single mothers and then keeping all male role models out. Sounds like some trouble. Marriage was always supposed to provide security, stability, and space. For a great many people, for a great many centuries, it did no such thing. But there was no choice but to swallow your complaints and hollow out your heart. I mean, you gotta do that at work, honey. When I was a telemarketer, and I hated my job, I had to be like, okay, I just gotta call the next caller. Beep, hello, I'm calling from so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. And I would just be like, oh, when is the break time? And then go to the vending machine and have those crackers that are orange with the peanut butter filling, you know, or they have a cheese filling, a powdered cheddar cheese filling, and drink a soda and be like, oh, this is hell, you know. Ugh. There were rooms in the house of the father that were forbidden, where violence and terror chattered in the walls and shame skulked in the unswept corners. What is this, Beauty and the Beast castle? Don't go in the West Wing! And to live there was fearful and sometimes painful, but exile would be worse. Today the nuclear family is transparently failing even on its own terms. For most married people, legal partnerships no longer provides even the basic economic security that was part of the deal from the outset. Okay, so yeah, the economy is doing rough right now, but you can marry someone with status, and your man provides more than just economic security. Provides a source of intimacy, and there's different kinds of security. Okay, so we got to put here different kinds of security. Okay, because you have emotional, intimacy, spiritual. Okay, you're gonna have different things he's gonna secure you in to fortify you, right? And that should be kept in mind, okay? When my husband and I first met, he had roommates, you know? He only had his motorcycle. He didn't even have a SUV or truck like now. And I liked him anyways. I was renting a room and in another apartment, and we went on coffee dates. I just wanted him. I wanted him, you know. Now, mind you, he had a body like Hercules. He's still very fit, but I mean, he was eye candy, definite eye candy, and so I remember I used to have to go to the community clinic for my doctor checkups, and I rode the motorcycle like holding him while pregnant, which I wouldn't do again, but I'd be pregnant on the back of the motorcycle. But when my first was born, I put her in the baby carrier, like I would carry her on my chest, and then ride the bus to go visit the doctor. And that was hard. Then later he bought me a car. You know, he earned more money, and he earned more, and then slowly he built up. So I guess that calls me a Barbara the Builder. I'm not a pick-me, but I think they would call me a Barbara the Builder insult. But I've always been that way. Would I want my daughters to do that? Probably not. I would be like, marry someone with status already. But your heart likes who it likes, and you can see men who have work ethic. That's the difference. If a man has work ethic and you're like, okay, he's sober, he's fit, he's healthy, he's driven, you know, he's not a gambler, he's not a gangbanger, he's just a hard-working man, rule, values, that's potential. You know, when you put a seed in the soil to grow an oak tree, to grow an avocado tree, to grow a peach tree, there's potential. You know, you put it in the soil, you tend to it, and you can watch it flourish, and later it will give you shade. That's what some marriages are. You can wait at the finish line, or you can be with them at the starting point. They may ditch you, they may not. Once they finish, and they may get an upgraded wife. But that's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's really up to you what kind of patience you have. How strong is that desire? You know, my connection is pretty strong. So some say if a man gets a woman who likes him more, she tolerates more. If the man likes the woman more, she feels special, but if she doesn't like him as much, she's not going to take on as much suffering and pain. So it depends on what you want in life. It's nice as a woman to feel like the prize, and you can see if you're, but that works when he has money. When you're the prize, and he has money, he showers it upon you, it's okay, it's good. But if he doesn't have wealth, and he likes you more, and you're struggling with him, and you like him less than he likes you, well, then you're going to ditch the relationship. So you just gotta see what works, really, when it comes to what you want out of life. So, think about that. Millennials have learned to live without security, but that doesn't mean we have to live without commitment or community or care. This is what the theorist Sophie Lewis calls full surrogacy. Okay, well, actually, we'll save this part for next time. She's gonna go into a longer quote. And I'm hungry now. I want to go eat my beet and goat cheese salad because my stomach keeps growling. But we'll pause here, and we've done an hour. So let me know what you think. It's a very interesting section, and I really enjoy reading it because I'm seeing the nonsense that is this ideology. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and keep us on the straight path, and may more American Muslim women who have seen the horrors of feminism refute it, so that women in other countries who think they're making a good trade can wake up. And like, comment, and share, please. Heavily shadow banned. It's getting even worse, It's been like that for some time. But, what can you do? Got all kinds of degenerate videos, but for some reason I just think that Islam has a difficult time really getting the same exposure as other genres. Anti-Islam stuff, though, gets pushed, which is quite sad, but maybe a new CEO will change all that in the future, so we just gotta keep going. Also, if you'd like to support my work, I'm not monetized. And I do write a lot of refutations and commentaries on my blog, and you can go there, which also it's $5 a month, supports the channel, and it's www.subscribestar.com/Milahan Archive. Hope to see you there.